As the wind erodes and the water corrodes, altering everything we think we know, but we don't. It's all temporary, and it used to, but now the thought doesn't scare me or keep my feet from following one after another until I slumber. Then my mind, not my feet, wander and dream of people and places I'll never see again. I've mended as much mental anguish as I can, and now I try to use this language to take these thoughts from my head to my pen. Cause though I don't speak of my dead friends or the circumstances, often the blow never softens or yields. I'm in a desolate field, lonesome stargazing, night blazing, chasing traces of remembrance and reverence of relevant friends and acquaintances, and faceless and nameless names and faces. And while my mind is racing through these photo albums and quotations, all these people and places far from me, for only land and stars I see when I'm outside of the mile-high city, which is not my city, for I was born 1,000 miles northeast of there, in the land of beer and lakes and pistol fire, on MLK's birthday, where there is no minorities and segregation's mandatory. But that's a whole nother story altogether, and no matter the weather or hardships that any place brings, I'll still laugh when people shiver and say it's freezing, or say, hey, no wait, I already had 18 mixed drinks, but I guess it's a Midwest thing, and I'm a mess from a dirty city and brought most of this filth I've gathered with me.
Welcome to another episode of Experience Andy Weins Live. And this week, we're going to do a little special. I mean, you know what? Every week is special. This week, though, we're going to talk about how to get from where you're at to where you're going without taking the straight path. That's right. How do we get where we want to go without being focused on the object of obsession? Coming up after the verse.
My work labors on as lovers sleep in each other's arms, remaining calm and collect. I begin my self-reflection process of redemption. Honestly, I don't know where this road leads, or if I'm even going. Could be rowing upstream, or worse, chasing my dreams to the peak, to finally be somebody doing something with what I have, rather than saying again and again that I can't and I won't anymore from this day forward. Cause Lord knows the past is set in stone, the present is yours to mold and to use for future uses. I know I'm a nuisance, I'm told, except neither young nor giant nor gnome. I don't sleep on these streets usually, though I've made thrones of my own. I don't sit well with idle hands, though don't know what to do when I'm home all alone. I'm a menace thrown from society, and as it lies to me, I'll smile silently as others do as they please. I am watching and listening, and I'm grinning all the while, 'cause sometimes all you can really do is smile. So as the work labors on, I'll keep on singing my songs, and this day is never done. We just keep on spinning around that sun. And well, through all these miles and trials, all I've learned to do is smile. Is to smile.
Welcome to another week of Experience Andy Weins Live. And this week, we're going to be talking about getting busy living or getting busy dying. That's right. We are using the word busy today because it's one of my favorite lines from one of my favorite movies, Shawshank Redemption, right? Get busy living or get busy dying is what we're doing today. First, though, we're talking about the moment of gratitude. So every week, I start things off with the moment of gratitude, which is supporting me to see and seek out the things I'm grateful for in this world. And when I focus on what I'm grateful for, I find greatness within the people around me. So this week, it's come from Donnie C. So Donnie C is a guy I used to work with at Waste Management. So back then, I was a route manager for Waste Management. He was a driver in the residential line of business. And I was known as a hard ass, because I was an angry emailer. I was a hard ass when I worked in waste management and worked in that world. Because I was the youngest, I was college educated, and I felt inferior, right? I had a confidence issue, so I figured if I went hard, that would get them to respect me. In some ways it did, and not always the ways. Anyhow, Donnie C was a driver. He came from the residential line of business, and he came from the commercial line of business. And I remember one of our first conversations, Donnie C came up to me and he's like, why are you so angry? Why are you always going to be a hard ass? I'm like, well, people don't respect me. He's like, we'll listen to you. Just have some confidence. And I really took that to heart. And him and I developed a working relationship while we rolled out a new line of business together. And he really mentored me on how to go soft, right? And my battle cry this last year is strong enough to be soft. And so he really planted that seed maybe 10 years ago. And we had a good working relationship. Yeah, there was challenges and struggles. And along the way, I did learn from him. Anyways, Donnie C reached out to me last week. We see each other on Facebook every now and then. Nothing too crazy. He reached out, and I'm pull this correctly. He said, hey, bud, God has given you great speaking abilities. Have you ever thought about spreading his word to all of your followers? And I thought, what a compliment that is. Here's a man that supported me at one point, and now he's asking me in an evangelical kind of way to support him in something that he feels very strongly about. Johnny C is a very religious man, talks about, religion quite a bit on Facebook, and I'm honored. Now, I'm not a religious person. I do not associate with a particular religion or particular political groups, right? I vote. I'm a good person, right? I do good for the sake of good. However, the fact that he sees what I'm doing in that same vein of doing good for good's sake, that was a little instrumental motivation that gave me a little kick this last week. And it reminds me of something I talk about often about you ain't got to be a preacher to preach, a teacher to teach, or a leader to lead. What it comes down to is when people are listening, you're preaching. When people are learning, you're teaching. And when people are following, you're leading. Him reaching out to me is proof of concept in that. All too often, it's these limiting self-beliefs that prevent people from moving forward, prevent people from moving in a direction of righteousness that they have within them. They have a lack of confidence like I had. They don't have the title they think they need. They don't have the wherewithal, and yet they have the best idea in the room. And all it comes down to is a limiting self-belief. So I'm going to say it again. You ain't got to be a preacher to preach, a teacher to teach, or a leader to lead. If they're listening, you're preaching. If they're learning, you're teaching. If they're following, you're leading. Stay on that path. So thank you, Donnie C, for the wisdom you gave me 10 plus years ago. Thank you for giving me more words of encouragement to remind me who I am. And then what we do here together, because it is a together thing, what we do here together is worthy of everybody's time. My ask this week, similar to weeks in the past, I want to get out and speak. I want to spread the word about what I'm talking about how much words fucking matter to the masses. So whether we want to hire, fire, and promote people in our lives, because, that is a thing, or people that need to focus on the language of leaders so that they are empowered. They slay those self-limiting beliefs so that they can live the life they want to live. Let me know, make those introductions so I can do workshops and keynotes anywhere from 45 minutes up to 4 hours. Small groups of 10 or 12 people all the way up to 500. I want to get out in front of this world and share my ideals with the world, and I'm asking for your support. Okay, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. So I will address the elephant in the room, right? Get busy living or get busy dying. One of my favorite lines from one of my favorite movies, Shawshank Redemption. So elephant in the room, yes, busy is a shit word. Busy is a state of being. However, in this sentence, busy is an action. Busy is a verb. It's doing the thing. And that's what Red is essentially telling Andy in the movie, right? Get busy living or get busy dying, because those are your two choices in this world. Dr. Bill Crawford says there are only 3 things in this world you have to do. You have to be born, you have to die, and in between you have to live. Everything else, ladies and gentlemen, is a choice. So this weekend, I had the opportunity to spend time with my godson. My godson's 15. He's fucking up in high school because that's what 15-year-olds do. He's grounded forever because he made some poor choices in his life. And so I got to spend some time with him because his mom needed to borrow some tools from me. I loaned her the tools. She came back and dropped them off. We got chatting. I'm like, what are you guys doing later? Let's go to an Admirals game. Then he gave me an answer. So I responded about an hour later, hey, are we good for the Admirals game? And my godson's name is Rylan. She's like, no, Rylan doesn't really like hockey. He just wants to stay at home. He's just going to watch YouTube videos and make planes. He makes planes out of cardboard, really big into aviation. I'm like, cool. This has nothing to do with hockey. This has everything to do with getting out of his place, out of his space, right? Go see something different. He's grounded forever, so at least let's go experience life in a controlled environment, right? So she's like, all right, I get it, right? It was out of her comfort zone to push him and tell him what was going on, because she often wants to accommodate him. And it was out of his comfort zone to leave his bedroom, right? And so they came with me to the Admirals game, and we ended up having a great time. Admirals lost like 10 and a half seconds left in the game. They gave up a goal, whatever. We saw like 37 fights. We ate overpriced, shitty food, and we had a great time to bond. During that time, I learned more about how much Rylan loves aviation. And here's my godson. He's 15 years old. Most times I see him is like his birthday or his family parties, or sometimes him and I hang out. And I never really get to know him in depth. And yet, sitting next to him at a hockey game, I really got to chat with him because there was no formalities to it. And he showed me pictures of planes he took at the Air and Water Show. He showed me pictures of planes that he's built on a cordboard. He talked about how much he loved aviation, and not as a pilot. He likes and wants to work on planes. And so I'm sitting there with his mom and him, and we're talking about, well, in order to go and pursue that career, you got to finish high school first. He's like, well, I said, what are you failing? He's like, he was failing one class. He's got a couple D's. And I'm like, and her mom's like, you got to get those up to C's. And I was like, well, hold on, right? C's get degrees, D's get diplomas. And I'm very strong on this point because at one point at the same high school at 15 years old, I sat there with a guidance counselor talking about how my goal was to graduate high school. That was it, not college. So a D minus was good enough to hit our minimum objective, which to graduate high school. And now here's my godson. He's got a couple A's, couple B's, not a dumb kid. He's not applying himself. And so now he's being told, you got to get those F's and D's up to C's. And he's saying, let me get D's across the board. And I held off. I said, okay, hold on. You want to get into aviation? His mom's like, yeah, do you know any Air Force or Navy recruiters? Absolutely. I know people I can introduce you to. One of my best friends is a pilot in the Army. He can talk to you about helicopters. I got a guy I went to high school with that works at F-16s out in Madison. You can talk to him about those things. We can open up those doors. And now how we can do this together is by focusing on the end state, which is graduate high school and then join the Air Force or the Army or the Navy and start working on planes. That gets us where we're going. So the immediate, right? We can now say, okay, this is what we spend all our time focusing on this. Okay. And now immediately though, we got to get those grades up. Because when you're grounded forever on a Saturday night, chances are there's not much you can do to get that end state of making your grades go up. Right? You already screwed up what you screwed up. There's no test to be taken. There's probably not a lot of homework, right? And yet we made an impact on his goals by focusing our effort on something else. We focus on his passion. Just like last week, I talked about being in a hole and how I transformed my pain to passion to define my purpose. I now can share that message with him. How do we take your passion for planes and find it to be your purpose? All because we chose to go to a hockey game, which will help him and support him graduate high school. What we did here is we focused on what we could do. We got some momentum from initial movement. And after this, I thought about my life, right? The places and times I was stuck in a hole. I talked about last week on the show, when I was stuck in a hole, what did I do? Right? I spent a lot of my energy and effort focused on the hole and my situation. And I thought back to my life, right? I thought back to that time in my life. I'm so thankful I lived that time. I'm thankful that I wrote about it 5 years ago. I'm thankful I talked about it last week to bring up some of those memories. And I remember for me, what ended up happening when I was stuck in that hole, the thing that got me out of the drinking and the depression and the PTSD and the suicidal ideations, it was a job. I got a career. I started doing construction work, right? And then over time, I had purpose. I found my way going to college. I got a job bartending. And all of a sudden, I had a social life. And I met new people. And also, I'm not focused on the depression and the drinking because I found something else to do. Later in my life, when I was struggling in the Army, I got kicked out of my platoon. I got kicked out of my company when I was deployed to Gitmo. So what did I do? I focused on college. I thought, okay, I'm dying right here and now. This is not working. So what's next? Let me start putting effort in right now for what's next. Because the Army, that ain't going to do it. Let me focus on what's next. And over time, I put less effort into the bullshit I was dealing with in Gitmo. I spent less time talking about how much of a victim I was down there. I spent more time talking about the victory I was going to achieve when I got back home, when I completed college. When I got back home, I went through a divorce, and my divorce was weighing me down. And what did I do? I started a business. When I started a business, all of a sudden I started getting my confidence back. I got the money to pay for my divorce. I got the camaraderie that I missed from the military. I got the community that I missed from my divorce, or the association, the relationships that I now have with people and my customers and my networking partners. Recently, a couple of years ago, I was really struggling in a relationship. So I started writing a book. I started to say, okay, I'm struggling in a couple of different relationships. I was struggling in my romantic relationship. I was struggling in my relationships with both my brothers and my parents. I thought, okay, hold on. What am I doing wrong? What can I do better? And I started writing a book. I started putting down all the bits I think about. I started putting in my own self, investing in me, because I like to blame others. So I thought intrinsically, what works for me? And I started writing a book. I wrote a book so that I can better understand and communicate with other people, recognizing that when I put myself forward, when I'm vulnerable, I invite more people in to be vulnerable with me. And that's where the magic happens. When I look back at why I wrote my book because I struggled in my relationships with people, and my relationship with the people are important. The 4 freedoms in this world: freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of purpose, freedom of relationships. I spent my energy and my effort and my money and my purpose focusing on my freedom of relationships and what I can do. COVID happened. COVID happened to all of us a few years ago. It's a joint venture we went through. At the time, I got rid of my business. It had nothing to do with COVID. I exited a business, and then COVID hit, and now all of a sudden I lacked purpose. That summer, I started playing volleyball. I hadn't played volleyball in a few years. I started playing volleyball that summer. I was playing 5 or 6 days a week that summer. And all of a sudden, I found new groups of people to associate with, new community, a newfound love for volleyball. I learned how to play the game all over again at 36 years old, and I fell back in love with volleyball. It had nothing to do with COVID. My business didn't get any better. The speaking gigs that had got canceled didn't come back, and yet I worked on myself. In all these times in my life, I worked on something else which ultimately made me better. And then when I look back at the thing I was stuck on, the thing I was struggling with, all of a sudden, that thing did not seem so insurmountable. I stand in front of you here today and I show you my receipts. Miss Precious Williams, 10-time pitchmaster queen. She was on Shark Tank. She lives in Brooklyn. She's one of my favorite people. Follow her on social media. Precious Williams, right? She talks about showing them receipts. My ex and I used to have this argument. I would talk about these times in my life, these pivotal times in my life where I was somewhere stuck. And this is what I learned, and this is where I'm at. And she would get so mad. She'd go, why are you always living in the past? I'm not. I'm showing the receipts. I want in the simplest way possible to show the vulnerability, to tell you where I was, what I did, and where I'm going. I want to focus on the gift. All those things that happened, they didn't happen to me. PTSD didn't happen to me. PTSD happened for me. So can I appreciate every single day that I get to wake up? Getting kicked out of the Army didn't happen to me. It happened for me to focus on my next career. Getting divorced didn't happen to me. Getting divorced happened for me, not to me, for me, so that I could focus on growing my business. I could focus on my relationships with my family members that had become distant during my marriage and during my deployment. My most relationship I was struggling with, right? I wasn't a victim. It didn't happen to me. It happened for me to recognize how important my relationships with people are. I focused on the gift and I showed the receipts, because there's other times in my life I can look back and say, this is what was happening. This is how I took it. And I stood there and fucking took it. I didn't do anything about it. I played the victim card. I listened to my own bullshit stories. I told my own bullshit stories. I did not show up as the person that I wanted to be. And even now, recently, I've been struggling with some personal and professional relationships that have dissipated over time. And so now I do push-ups. That's been my new jam, right? When I'm having these negative thoughts, the self-thoughts, right? Oh, this is going to shit. It must be me. This happened. Oh, woe is me. No. Now I get down and do push-ups. It has revolutionized my eyes, revolutionized my being, I guess, over the last couple of weeks, right? What ends up happening? The negative thought is there. I get down 15 seconds. That's it. 15 to 20 seconds of push-ups. That's it. Enough for me to breathe, enough for me to think, enough for me to count. and I stand up, I take a deep breath, all of a sudden the blood's flowing. All of a sudden, I'm feeling better than I was when I got down, because you know what? I got down and I got back up and I pushed. And like the drill sergeant said, when you get sick of pushing yourself up against the earth, push the earth against you. And I get up and all of a sudden the endorphins are kicking in because I got the blood flowing. And when that negative self-thought kicks in again, I get down and I push up some more. I know it takes 90 seconds to recalibrate, to let that thought dissipate. I choose to lean into my 90 seconds. I choose to get down and get myself back up. I choose to do something healthy. I could go have a drink. I could call someone and bitch about it. I could go out and have a cigarette. I can sit there and wallow in my self-misery. Or I can do push-ups. Rylan could have sat there on Saturday night and not done his homework. He could have sat there and watched his YouTube videos, played with his planes, sat there while mom was in the other room doing her crafts, and everybody would have been comfortable. And no progress would have been made. The next day, I got a text message from Danielle thanking me. Thank you so much. Rylan's never been to a hockey game. He hated something he never even experienced before. She said from him, he will never turn down another invite to a hockey game. He will never turn down another invite to hang out with Uncle Andy, for lack of a better term, right? He's never going to turn down an invite. And it goes back to what I said a few weeks ago about last week, I said it too. Never neglect an opportunity for improvement. He did not neglect. And even Danielle, Rylan's mom, she looked back and said, wow, I stood up as a mom and said, this is what we're doing. I'm going to get out of my comfort zone and we're going to grow together. Because she's struggling right now in her career and she's struggling with her purpose. So you have those two people struggling together. And instead of sitting there and wallowing in that self-misery and the pity, we said, let's get up. Let's go somewhere and do something. That movement created momentum. In the days since then, Rylan has a renewed sense of purpose. He felt, okay, we did something. You can be grounded and still go out and have a good time. You can be grounded and still learn about the world and experience new shit. And Danielle, we talked about her career. We didn't solve any problems. We talked about, well, what is it you want to do? What are you passionate about? What motivates you? And it renewed her idea of what her next career is going to be. All because we decided to go to a hockey game. My ask of you this week is simple. Look at your life. Look back at those times in your life when you were down and almost out. What did you do to get through that time? What did you focus on? Joe Rogan had a woman a couple months ago now on his podcast, and she talked about trauma. And the more you talk about your trauma, right, and you go to your counselors, talk about your trauma, the more it's real, the more you're feeding it, right? You are feeding that wolf of fear and hate and insecurity. Or you can stop talking about it and start doing something, anything, everything is better than living in the kill zone. So I challenge you, look back at your life. Where were you and what did you do to get where you're at today? What do you need to do right now to get where you want to be tomorrow? Say yes to the opportunities. Never neglect an opportunity for improvement. Say yes to the hockey games of the world. Say yes to the thing you've never done before, and yet it scares the hell out of you. That 1 degree of change over time will make a huge difference when you decide different. It starts with your language. What are the things that happen for you? What are the gifts that you received because of them? What is the gift right now in front of you that you look to be not a gift? You look at as an obligation or a responsibility that you don't want. What is the gift in your life? From the top, we talk about being grateful. What makes you great will make you grateful in time. So lean into the gift. Be thankful. Express your gratitude for that gift. And when you lean into it, you, ladies and gentlemen, will be great. Focus on that unique ability. Focus on what makes you great. In the story of Michelangelo carving out David, right? He took this piece of marble and he carved out David from it. There are days when you can carve the hands and the feet and the features in the face. And there's other days where you got to knock away the block that's far on the outside. Some days you got to make some progress. Maybe it's not the finite, detailed progress you wanted to make, and yet some progress is better than no progress. As you focus on what makes you great as Les Brown's, as you focus on what your unique ability is, David Sullivan, as you focus on taking out the stone to reveal the David within you, focus on what you can do today. Do the fucking thing. You know what the thing is. Deep down, sit with it, think about it, meditate on it, analyze it. Do the thing that you know is next in your life. Tell the world to celebrate those victories, to encourage yourself, to get that instrumental and intrinsic motivation going, and finally show the fuck up. Show the fuck up as the person you are, vulnerable and full of doubt and full of fear. Show up as who you are and own it. Do that, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you next week.
Well, through all these miles and trials, all I've learned to do is smile. Is to smile.